Microsoft is probably the centerpiece of every organization in the modern world. Even those companies that are Google-centric or Amazon-centric, they still have quite significant investment in Microsoft licenses and in Microsoft software, Microsoft cloud services, many of them. Microsoft it has become almost a commodity in 2024. But that's exactly the problem and the reason why it's important. If you're familiar with software asset management, if you're already in the thick of it, I don't need to convince you. That's probably the first vendor that you need to look after. The Microsoft licensing problem right now in 2024 is that it's not becoming easier. Some months there are no changes at all in Microsoft licensing, and sometimes Microsoft comes with something that drastically changes the entire Microsoft ecosystem. For example, probably the biggest change happened actually a year and a half ago when they allowed every license on the subscription to be brought to any cloud platform, any provider. And you may think it probably doesn't affect the on-premises environments, but those companies that move to the cloud and want to pay less when they move to the cloud, they really need to look after that. And if you're looking after their licensing estate, bring your own license becomes one of the ways to reduce costs for procurement. And cloud didn't eliminate licenses. I remember I was part of a conference in about 2012 when people were almost fanatically saying, cloud is coming. We're going to get rid of licenses. That was 12 years ago. That didn't happen. And in the Microsoft world right now, Microsoft is still attached to their licenses. They still push their licensing sales. Licenses aren't going anywhere. Microsoft licenses either. If you are anyhow familiar with licensing of service providers, then I have news for you. Microsoft is trying to push out the service provider licensing program. It still exists. It will still exist for probably another 5 years, but it's one of those programs when clients paid just for consumption, for the usage of certain cloud-hosted services. What Microsoft is trying to replace it with is CSP licenses, pushing clients back from cloud consumption to licenses. So I guess that's already enough to understand that licensing of Microsoft software isn't going anywhere. Azure Hybrid Benefit is a big deal, by the way, if we talk about migration to the cloud. Microsoft has this program. When you move your Windows and SQL Server workloads to Azure, you can bring your own licenses. And if on SQL it provides very little benefit, on Windows Server licenses, it provides up to 90% savings on the licensing costs in Microsoft Azure. A massive way to save costs for a sizable organization, the organization that you may be looking after. And it needs to be done right. You need to understand how it works. You need to understand that, for example, I'll go a bit technical, so please excuse me. For example, if you use Azure Test Dev subscriptions, test and development subscriptions, then a hub should not be used there because those virtual machines are already discounted. They already don't require licenses. If you assign licenses there, you'll be losing money. The problem professionals in this area face is that Microsoft stopped teaching licensing. They don't teach licensing anymore. And it's deliberate. They want everybody to migrate to Azure. They want everybody to learn how that works, move clients to cloud. But as a big corporation, there's still an internal struggle. You may see that there's still this part of Microsoft that wants everybody to migrate to Azure, and part of the organization still holds to that licensing paradigm and wants companies to continue buying licenses. The only resource right now that is supported by Microsoft, where you can still learn Microsoft licensing, and I encourage you, if you don't know it, it's not a replacement for proper training. It's not a replacement for proper education, but it's a very good starting point. Or if you want to test how well you know Microsoft licensing, it's a free of charge resource, Get Licensing Ready. As a consequence of that, there are no certification programs right now. You can be certified by Microsoft on licensing. So how do you prove your worth? You need to go after independent certifications. The changes are so complex. What we wrote 3 years ago as up-to-date exam questions, they're still relevant, but the percentage of usage of those products and those scenarios is decreasing because everything is moving to the cloud. Everything is moving towards Microsoft 365 subscriptions, which are also online cloud subscriptions. So what I would suggest, if you haven't started or you are a Microsoft beginner, you know the basics and you want to continue improving your skills in that area so you would be able to manage Microsoft licenses and, most importantly, costs of those licenses, is as the first step, I would suggest going after Microsoft 365 licensing. Just learn as much as you can. Packages, add-ons, how that works. The licensing model is very simple. It's per user. The complexities and how you combine those, we call them persons or profiles, an information worker, a blue-collar worker, a delivery driver, what components do they need, and how to buy them in the cheapest way possible. There is a very good resource. It's free of charge. The only problem is they haven't updated it in a year. It's called m365maps.com. You can find resources there. You can start learning there. The second point is cloud licensing. I already mentioned Azure Hybrid Use Benefit. It's a simple topic. You can learn it quickly, but pay attention to detail. Ask around, read the blogs, follow us on our YouTube channel, and learn. And bring your own license. Not just Azure Hybrid Use Benefit, which is a small part of bring your own license, but the entire bring your own license program, because that will become more and more and more and more important in the years to come. Then I'm not sure if that's going to be a surprise for you, but I would put Power Platform in the third place. Power Apps and Power Platform are more and more adopted by companies, and they're very complex in terms of licensing. And if you become a guru in Power Platform, you will always find that niche for yourself where you'll be in demand. And only after that, I would suggest learning servers like Windows Server, SQL Server, because yes, they are important. They're very important, but they're not at the forefront of clients' interest. Unless it's your role, unless you were put in a position where you need to manage on-premises server licensing, then by all means, I'm giving you generic advice, but you can choose your own priorities. And probably doesn't make sense to pay much attention to traditional desktop licensing because that is going away. Of course, you can learn Azure. It's more of a FinOps. But speaking of SAM versus FinOps, I would say if you're only beginning your career, choose one. Choose one, but remember that although they're not the same, they must coexist. FinOps team should not forget that they may use existing licenses. And who tells them what license they may use? And whether those licenses exist? And how to buy and manage them is the software asset management department. So when you've learned Microsoft licensing, learn about the agreements. It's not only about how to license a particular product. It's also about how to license a product via a certain Microsoft licensing agreement. And if you know the term CSP, you probably do if you've touched Microsoft for a while. CSP is completely different to enterprise agreement. And if you know licensing via CSP, it doesn't mean necessarily that you know licensing through an enterprise agreement, and vice versa. CSP is becoming more and more important for large organizations because Microsoft promised that they will migrate every enterprise in the next years. They said 2 years. I don't believe that. I don't think it's going to happen in 2 years. It won't. You can take me on this promise. But they are migrating everybody onto the Microsoft Customer Agreement, which is CSP, essentially, but for large organizations. It's called MCA. It is the future of Microsoft licensing, and it's different to what you may have known. If you know the term software assurance, MCA or CSP doesn't have software assurance. The same benefits are done differently. So you need to learn that. You need to understand that. And I would also suggest don't bother with SPLA. Unless you work for a provider or support service providers, don't waste your time as a beginner on learning SPLA. It'll come when you need it. You will manage Microsoft licensing and tools. Those who tried working with tools for a while, they know. Remember that no tool does Microsoft right. There is no software management tool that does Microsoft correctly out of the box. It always requires a person, you, a knowledgeable person, to interpret the data from the tool's reports, to put the correct licenses in the tool, to assign them to the right service in the right way. None of those tools work automatically. That's why your value is not only just looking after licenses, but also making sure that if you see a number in the tool, it's a trustable, trustworthy number that you know it's correct. Don't trust tools out of the box. Put your effort into making them work. It's your opportunity to shine. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.